Are you none of the above?
Panelists cannot vote.
Hi guys, there's currently like 6 attendees here. So do you guys want to wait for like the others, or do you guys want to start right at 9 o'clock?
We're okay. It's up to you.
I think we could probably wait a couple of minutes and then we can start.
Yep, sure. Thank you so much for joining us today, by the way, for the attendees. Hi guys, so I think we will be starting now. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to our webinar entitled Digitalization in the Legal Industry. where we will be having discussion on the impact of how technology has transformed the way firms operate and the challenges of digitalization in the legal field. I am V Chin, and I will be the moderator for today's session. This webinar is part of the KPUM Stay at Home initiative, where we aim to empower law students and graduates at the comfort of your own home. Before going on, I would like to go through some housekeeping rules. This webinar will last around 60 minutes, where we will first have the speakers to address some of the questions we have prepared beforehand. After that, there will be a Q&A sessions where you guys can submit questions directed towards the panelists. If you are using Zoom, the mics and video function will be disabled, so please leave your question in the Q&A slot. If you are using Facebook, please leave your questions in the comment section. Please do not worry about questions being left in the dust, as I will redirect the questions back to Zoom, where the panelists can answer them. Also, it will be great if you could invite your friends who have missed out on the registration to join us today via the via the Facebook live stream. So that's about it. Let's begin the session by introducing the panelists. Firstly, we have Ms Adeline Chin here with us, who is the co-founder of Law Tech Malaysia, Law Asia 365, and the Cyrus Bookstore. She currently sits as a steering committee member of the Asia Pacific Legal Innovation and Technology Association, also known as ALITA. Moving on, we have Ms Ying Mei Lam, who is the co-founder and principal consultant of MWKA Technologies, which aim to utilize technology and data for business advantage. She was also named as one of Asia Law Portal's 30 people to watch in the business of law in Asia in 2019. Lastly, we have Mr. Abhilaash Subraimaniam, my apologies, who is currently an associate at the reputable firm Shearn Delamore Co. He specializes in Malaysian tax and revenue advisory, dispute resolution, and litigation work. He frequently speaks and conducts training on the subject of tax law in various forums. So let's start off with the first question. What are the practice areas and what are your respective practice areas, and how was the process of digitalization? How has it affected your the way you guys operate? Ms. Ying Mei Lam, can you please answer it first?
Hi, I'm May. I head Innovation and Tech at MWKA. These days, I deal mostly with change, and since lots of businesses have been thrown into the cycle of change throughout COVID, this has been a very interesting time for me. I've had a lot of business continuity meetings with both law firms as well as other businesses, and change management is a big part of what we do now in terms of upskilling people and also building resources and capabilities.
Nice. How about Ms. Adeline?
Hi, I am Adeline. I deal mainly in knowledge management. My scope of work is kind of similar to May's, and I deal a lot with change as well. But I also deal with the humanizing law firm part of things, especially when the legal practice is coming out of the lockdown. What I try to do with my clients is that we try to engage people outside of the law firm as much as possible in a way that we are able to help them reach out if they have any legal issues. And we're also trying to streamline processes within the firm in order to cater to that kind of humanizing efforts for the legal practice.
Nice. How about Mr. Abi?
Hi, yeah, as you mentioned, Vichin, I do tax law, but a lot of the work that we do is actually litigation based. And I think that's where a lot of the challenge and a lot of new norms were introduced following, obviously, the COVID pandemic, because a lot of processes had to be moved online. So we saw the courts move online. We'll probably look into that a little bit more later. But I think to start off, it was a challenge for a lot of law firms because many law firms didn't really have much time. The sort of movement control order was announced quite quickly, and many firms had to move their operations very quickly to to a more online-based system to work from home and things like that. So it was a challenge, but I think most people have actually embraced it, and it's now becoming a lot more common to hold meetings and even legal proceedings via sort of online portals. So I think Malaysia, the legal system has actually embraced it in part, but there are still challenges, which I think we can talk about as we move along.
To add on to that, may I ask, like, how has technology been implemented in Malaysian courtrooms, and like what are the potential like hurdles in this implementation?
Is that for me? Yeah. Okay. So I think we sort of have quite a few things going on. Even before MCO, we had like the e-review system that was introduced in many courts in Malaysia. So that's where case management's basically getting dates from the courts, getting directions from the courts. Previously, a lot of that was done face-to-face, and you'd have to actually go to court and wait sometimes a few hours just to see a registrar to get these directions. And you'd only be in court for a couple of minutes, but you'd have to wait for hours. So sometime in 2018, I believe they streamlined the process in many courts and introduced an e-review system. So where you can have these case managements done online, it's by exchange of messages on the portal. I think it's a great idea because, for one, it saves a lot of time. And it also creates more accountability. So you have an actual trail of what's happened. You have a better record of what's happened. And it's all written. So I think that's a great thing. Sometime in April, I think, as you're aware, we also did the first full online streaming of an application in Malaysia before the Court of Appeal. And that entire application was done via streaming. The judges were at their respective locations, and the lawyers were at their respective locations. And it proceeded very well. It was live streamed, and it was accepted pretty well. I think, though, there are certain challenges. The biggest one is that our legislation does not necessarily, or it's not clear enough if it actually caters for a lot of processes to be conducted online. So our legislation says that if the chief justice so directs, you can the courts can choose their time and place and where the court sits. But that doesn't necessarily mean it caters for online hearings, especially if it's contentious, long drawn out hearings where you have witnesses and things like that. And the problem with that is that in Malaysia, we have a very clear position in law that consent of parties cannot be used to confer jurisdiction. That means just because all the parties agree that you can have a hearing in a particular manner and it's all done online, if the law is not clear enough to allow it, that could invalidate the proceedings. It's not been tested in Malaysia, but it is a real risk. So I think that is probably the biggest challenge, and the law does need to be amended to cater for that. And I think there are steps that the Bar Council is taking now to try and push those amendments, but until those come, I think there's going to be some uncertainty about how those proceedings move.
Does Ms. Adeline or Ms. Lum has anything to add on to that?
I am just going to add on to some of the other things that the judiciary has introduced. I believe the judiciary also has the e-jamin system, e-lelong, and I think one of the latest technology that was introduced is the QR code scanning system for a verification of authenticity of the court documents. And that one is in Peninsular Malaysia, if I'm not mistaken. I believe Abi can check whether they are actually implemented proper. But yeah, I think the judiciary is taking quite a number of steps to digitalize the happenings in court. And I think it's a good step ahead, good step forward.
That's great. And the next question is, how can existing practicing lawyers adapt and better equip themselves to continue to excel in the legal industry, particularly when it comes to like coping with the pandemic and working virtually and stuff like that? Ms. Lum?
I think specifically, adopting a growth mindset to become, just very open in terms of what you need to learn about where you would like to explore in order to grow, both technically as well as perhaps more aligned to your consumers or customers or clients. however you may see them, because they are also going through very tough times now. Becoming client focused, I suppose, would be the word, whether or not it will be through efficient collaboration with tools, meeting them more often in spaces they are comfortable, whether it be online or offline. Generally, I think working digitally also has to be balanced with the human aspect of things in maintaining relationships and really being a trusted partner to clients.
Sorry, what about Mr. Avi? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's okay. So there is a sort of problem in that I think many lawyers are not ready to embrace the change that comes with online hearings. If you actually go, the Malaysian lawyers, the Malaysian bar, they have a Facebook page, and there's actually like many discussions on this, and you can see that it's sort of divided down the middle, where many people are really against it. For certain things, I can kind of understand. So I think when it comes to elements such as cross-examining witnesses and things like that, I think it obviously gives a certain edge if you're able to see the reactions a little bit clearer. It also prevents problems such as people maybe cajoling the witnesses or giving them the answers because you can't really see, and you can't see the witness giving the answer in face and oath. But besides that, I think doing the hearings online, many lawyers should be embracing it. The Bar Council and many even previous presidents of the bar have been very strong in the efforts in saying that we should be moving to this system just because A, it's more efficient, it's more in line with what other countries are doing. So changing the mindset is going to be, I think, a major hurdle in that regard. Many lawyers are not ready for that change. And I think many young lawyers are, but maybe some lawyers who are slightly more senior are not. And changing that mindset and showing that it can work is going to be a challenge. As far as client side goes, though, I think most clients have embraced doing meetings and stuff via, Zoom and Skype. And most businesses seem to be up for it. But I think lawyers, it's going to take some time to change the mindset, but it definitely should be done. I'm all for it.
Nice. Does Ms. Adeline have anything to add on to that?
I would say in this age, coping with the pandemic, working digitally, I think the most important thing for lawyers to do is to have fun experimenting, because you not just have clients to think of, you have your colleagues to think of, you have the progress of the firm getting out of an economic crisis to think of. This is the best time, a time of change and a time of flux is the best time to experiment. So whatever works are things that you can keep, and if it doesn't work, chuck it lah.
Okay, that's nice. And moving on, how are law firms or like even your own companies, how are you guys handling and incorporating like technology in your like practices and everyday like day-to-day operation of your companies? Ms. Adeline?
Well, I was just chatting with the panelists, my fellow panelists earlier, and we mentioned that it is good to be able to work from home because I don't need to go through the Cal Jam, and it's good for managing energy levels. And I believe that quite a number of lawyers, especially during the MCO time, would have experienced the same thing, that they realize that they have more control over their time when they are able to complete tasks more efficiently. It's based on their energy levels. Some people are night owls, some people are early risers. Sometimes not everybody work in the same mode throughout the day. So yeah, for my company, because my entire team is able to work digitally, all of us can be in different parts of the world, and the most important thing is to meet deadlines. Basically, it's trust and honor. So if you are able to honor your promise that you are able to deliver a certain piece of work by this time, I trust you to deliver it at that time, and if it's completed, good for the both of us. So there's not much change in terms of my company. In terms of the clients that I serve, which are mainly law firms, there are way more change in terms of having to cope digitally, I believe. But I'll let the other panelists share their views as well.
Okay, how about Ms. Lum?
Thank you, Vijin. It's actually pretty much, I think the approach that we take is very similar to Adeline's. My team in the MWKA Technologies is a hybrid remote team. We basically work on projects. We can work from wherever we are. We are not solely based in Malaysia. We are based in Singapore, and we do have staff in Europe as well as in US. So working remotely has become a norm for us, and this has become a strength during this time for the clients we serve, including MWKA Law in Malaysia. And we have also reached out to our other clients in Europe, law firms in Europe. And by and large, I think the trend is to continue in a new normal with a certain amount of wariness in terms of juggling health and safety with the ability or the newfound ability for a lot of lawyers to work remotely. A lot of the Europeans actually really love the freedom to work from home, and they will be looking at reducing their office space, which costs quite a bit, in the city centers. And that would be definitely something that would help them in this economic climate. On the firm practice management side, we are working really hard to empower the people in these firms and yet still hold them accountable for their work, their decisions. The goal really is to help our clients have talented people on all levels of organization, empowering them to be able to work the best that they can, make mistakes if they need to make some mistakes, and as Adeline says, chuck them if it doesn't work. So really the freedom to experiment given these unprecedented times is really important. Something that the firm's leadership also needs to understand and to lead that change. And leading that change is something that we're really active about in this period of time.
Nice. What about Mr. Abi in terms of like law firms? How are they handling like the technology stuff?
So I can't speak for all law firms because I wouldn't know the practices of all. I would say that it definitely was a challenge because traditionally the majority of firms that at least I know of it, and big firms, I think especially so. I think small firms may have some more flexibility, but big firms especially, there was not a whole lot of working from home elements. I don't think you'd hear that it's very common at all. It's quite rare. So as I said, it was a challenge as I was speaking to the panelists before we started. It was a real challenge to move everything and we didn't have much time. So I think some firms are equipped to do that. So so the major issue is file storage, right? So how do you access your files? Because as far as research and stuff can go, we've always been doing that online. Most firms now would have access for online resources as far as research is concerned. But access to files is a real problem. A, because you need obviously software to be able to access documents remotely. And secondly, because there is also a safety issue, right? Many of these documents are very confidential. Who are you giving access to? How do you, prevent any leakage of information along the way? So that was, I would say, one of the major issues. I think I found it very hard to work from home to start. I found it less efficient for myself when MCO started. It got better as time progressed. And it was all very new to us. But I think a lot of firms now are just moving back completely to working in the office. I don't think we've quite embraced like what Ying Mei said about how in Europe, they're really embracing working from home a lot more. And many lawyers, in fact, that I know really did not like working from home because the one thing about the office is that, yeah, you may have to go in and things like that. But usually once you clock out and you leave, you're not bothered anymore. But many lawyers were saying that during MCO, when they were working remotely, they would get calls at midnight, arranging for conference calls at like ridiculous times, right? Like calls could start early in the morning and could drag on till late night because there was no real set boundaries anymore. So everything was just like, oh, it's free for all now because we're all working from home, which means that we can call you at any time. So I think that was one of the peeves that a lot of people had. That being said, I think firms did do a great job of moving stuff, and it should be embraced. But I think Malaysian lawyers have a long way to go to figure out how to be equally efficient, especially if you're doing litigation and there's a huge number of documents and you don't have it in front of you and it's all remote, it's all on your screen. I don't think we've quite learned how to do it yet, as well as we could, and as well as other countries are doing it. But I think the only way to really do that is just to embrace it and to continue doing it until we do figure it out.
Nice one, Abhi. I just want to add on that it's not just a challenge for legal firms, but really for every industry and not just law. And most people naturally resist change. So, the opportunities for those who choose to lead the change is actually quite abundant. So I'll leave you all to mull on that.
Yeah, that's true. And subsequently, the next question, what are the steps that the Malaysian bar, the Malaysian judiciary, or the AISC can take to assist in the process of digitalization? You guys can answer it, depends on.
I'll just start off. I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think the biggest step forward that needs to be taken is amendment of the law. To ensure that the courts are conferred with sufficient jurisdiction to undertake the majority. Because even now, it's not all types of hearings that can be conducted online. There are hearings that are being conducted online. In fact, interestingly, I believe the Court of Appeal in August is actually doing the first fully paperless hearing where all the documents are, there's not going to be any physical documents. Everything's going to be online. But I think the big problem, as I mentioned, is this jurisdiction of what types of cases can be heard and if you can have full trials done online. And until the law is amended, that's going to be a hurdle. I think a lot of lawyers are worried is if they agree to, oh yeah, okay, we'll both agree to confer this, to say that we'll do it this way. And then after it's done, if one particular party is not happy with the outcome of the hearing, they may then go and challenge it saying, oh, actually the court didn't have jurisdiction. So that's the main thing. But yeah, I think at this point, really only interlocutory applications of an urgent nature are being done online. And until the law is amended, I think we are going to be a bit in the dark about how we're moving forward. And the other issue, which I think is also a major issue in the UK, is there's this problem with certain parties being more equipped. So if you have one party who has much better technological capabilities versus another party which doesn't, that could create a disparity and this whole idea of access to justice and is it really fair if one party has all these capabilities and the other doesn't. That being said, if one party just refuses to accept change, I'm not sure that's a reason that the other party should be prejudiced. But yeah, I think the main challenge is that amendments to the law need to be made. I will leave Adeline and Ying Mei to talk about the more technological end of things. I think they're far more equipped than I am to talk about that.
That's very kind, Abhi. I'm actually going to concur with you on that because with the report of the Bar Council survey, when they surveyed the effect of the MCO on law firm owners in the Malaysian bar, it was actually quite interesting to see that for the big firms, like your firm, I think the response was quite evenly split. 1/3 disagrees, 1/3 strongly agrees, and some neither agree nor disagree. So, it's like a typical lawyers forum there, right? Meanwhile, the smaller firms, those more technologically advanced, you could see that they are clearly for it. Maybe due to the lack of resources, some of them were strongly against it. So you can really see the numbers there. It's very evenly split, whether it's financial resources, human resources, or technological resources. This all plays a very key part in access.
Okay, I'm going to play the devil's advocate here. I hear May's comment and the remarks with regard to the latest survey that the Bar Council has embarked on. And I'm just not sure how accurate that reflects the legal profession because the number of the sample size, okay, data speaking, the sample size that was taken out of the pool is, I believe, less than the 10% of all the members that are practicing in Malaysia, and that does not include Sabah and Sarawak. So there needs to be a little bit more care when taking into the results of this survey, but I guess the general sentiments should be rather reflected in the survey itself. I would like to add on the AIAC part of things, because that's ADR. Actually, I think for an ADR organization, it is good to put your ears on the ground to listen on what's happening in the legal profession, what's happening in court, and what's happening in the business scene. So AIAC actually took an effort to set up a thing called the Technology Expert Committee somewhere in January. I'm part and parcel of the committee member, and the tech committee is actually purposed to spearhead initiatives related to ADR and the technology industry. So what the tech community wants to do is to have lawyers and key players within the tech industry discuss recent developments, brainstorm solutions to current issues, and we're able to collaborate with one another on projects, and also to disseminate information and advancement of both law and tech within ADR and also the tech community itself. So that's something that AIAC has been doing that I know of. I will leave the Bar Council and the judiciary part to maybe Abi. Abi would be the best to answer those, I believe.
Yeah, as I said, as I just mentioned, I think the Bar Council are actually taking efforts to amend the law, and I think that's the main thing that they need to do. They have been trying to encourage as well people to move remotely. I think that's just a matter of time to see how those efforts pan out.
That's nice. Thank you for sharing your insights. And the next question is, what are like some of the technologies already being utilized and those that may enter the legal industry? Like what platforms and stuff like that? Ms. Lum?
Right now, we see a greater move to hearings and case management using video conferencing. There's also automatic transcription. So think about YouTube's automatic subtitles, right, for trial recordings. As to the rest of it, I think Abi would be the best suited given his current experience.
I'm not sure that's necessarily true, but what I have seen is so I'm not sure what different firms utilize. As far as we are concerned, I think we really upped the rev on softwares for video conferencing, especially stuff that was more secure. You do find that there was as you know, as also at the time when all of this was happening, there was a lot of reluctance to use Zoom. Unfortunately, because that's actually one of the easiest platforms to use. So there was a lot of usage of those types of technologies. But as far as firms have operation-wise, we've always had, at least in our firm, so as far as legal databases go, that's where a lot of the technology is, and we have large access to databases. It's very rare to find people even in the libraries these days because everything can be done. And the legal searching softwares have improved tremendously, that you can, previously you'd have to use very specific types of search terms to be able to find an answer to a question. And now a lot of the technology has improved that it's similar to Google, where you can just search random words and it comes up with the best match to what you're trying to find. So that's one major aspect that I've seen from the time I've started until now, how it's expanded quite greatly. The other large use of software, as I mentioned, is for storage of documents. It's huge, right? I mean, firms have thousands, if not millions of documents. And I'm not sure if every firm necessarily has that same sort of online software. So we use something called iManage. Yeah, so that's where a lot of the technology goes in as well, and we have a large dedicated IT team. But the lawyers ourselves, I mean, we are in the dark about how a lot of this works, and we just every time we just don't know something, we call our IT guys and go, "Can you please just explain what we're doing? I don't know what we're doing," and they'll come and sort it out for us. But yeah, legal research and document storage are the main two technologies, as well as things like invoicing. So obviously, all our invoices and storage of all the work that we do for the purposes of invoicing clients, all of that is obviously recorded digitally as well. and which is good because it creates a much greater accountability for clients, and it's what clients want. So yeah, I would say those are the main things that law firms are implementing. But I think Adeline probably would weigh in here with, she'd know a lot more in this subject area.
A lot of flattery, but I'm going to just add on a little bit right there. Abi is right in terms of legal research, because Malaysia, in terms of legal research, we are one of the highest users in Southeast Asia. We have more legal research platform being actively used in Malaysia compared to other countries within Southeast Asia. So yes, on that point, he's correct. Now, I think from what I understood and what I can see working with law firms is that law firms are actively adopting a lot of project management tools, project management systems, especially for smaller firms, sole proprietors or small firms, 2 to 5 or 2 to 6 lawyers, because that would make efficiency in terms of work much better. Virtual data rooms, which is what Abi mentioned, storage. Those firms that already have virtual data rooms, they start questioning the security of it. And they also start questioning how it is being accessed, as well as how things can be utilized more efficiently. So there comes things like meta tagging, there comes things like natural language processing. How do you search things that you want to look for? How easy it is to search for things that you want to look for among the pile of documents that has been scanned and stored in your virtual data room. And there's also a lot of questions on whether or not the resources, the tech resources that have been adopted by law firms for a good number of years is actually doing benefit for the firm. Because many a times from what I see is that a lot of law firms adopt many different types of solutions to cater for, let's say, accounting, CRM, precedent management, or document management system. And these are all provided by different solution providers, and they don't talk to each other. So at one point of time, especially during the MCO, when law firms realize, or lawyers realize, that there's a lot of resources that they have to still physically go back to the office to get, and they're unable to go out, and hence the frustration. Like, I want to go back to office, but I can't. And those things are not properly stored in a digital format. And they don't know how to access it because they don't talk to each other. Your billing and accounting platform does not talk to your document management platform. So you can search for how much you have billed this client, but you're unable to access the files, and you're unable to see what the progress of the client's matter has been. So a good number of law firms actually looked into streamlining all this technology that has been adopted years ago, and never really had the time, or never really put their minds into thinking whether or not the little inefficiencies for these softwares to talk to each other actually hampers the operations of the firm until MCO hits and they couldn't access what they need online. So yeah, these are the things that I saw.
That's awesome sum up, Adeline. Just to add on there, I think the legacy system problem was what Adeline was really talking about. And legacy systems are precisely what the financial institutions have been fighting or battling with for years, since the early 2000s. And this again is not alone a law firm or law industry problem. The problem where it's security by design, whether it's designed with the customer in, with the customer in mind when it's designed, how to communicate not just with people, but with systems. These processes really need a lot of thought, and leading that change will really help both people and the firm improve processes and productivity by a long shot.
I see. Thanks for sharing. And the next question is like, how has working from home affected your style of working? As in, is it still like 9 to 6 and stuff like that? Mr. Avi?
As I previously mentioned, during MCO, it was free for all. It was working at any time of the day. Really, I
Yeah,
had
actually, I've heard like lawyers having like two phones. So during working hours, they use this phone. Like after working hours, they be like, oh, I'm just gonna shut this phone off. So I'm, personal phone and stuff like that.
No, I don't really think that the shutting off system works anymore. Everyone really works around the clock now. You could get emails that you have to respond to it even way after you've left the office. Yeah, it was different. It was certainly it was, I said, it was free for all. We could be working at any time. I had conference calls that started at 1 a.m. I think especially so. I mean, our clients are at least for my practice area, the majority of them are Malaysian based. But I think if you're in law areas such as financial services and things like that, you also have a lot of international clients, and they will want calls at weird hours. And because of the time difference, it just became so much easier for all those calls to be held at those times. That being said, now we're really much back to normal. We're, at least as far as I'm concerned, we're back in the office for the most part. So yeah, but I think Ying Mei and Adeline probably their systems are more attuned to working from home, as they've mentioned earlier.
Okay, maybe I'll go first. There's actually been very little change to my working style because all along we have been able to work digitally. So whether or not our clients see me physically or see my team physically is quite unimportant, so long as deadlines are met and the work has been delivered proper at a good quality.
I see. What about Miss Lum?
Okay, since this is a law firm question, I'm going to answer from the part of the Mah Weng Kwai Associates in Malaysia. And really, it's been quite interesting for the law firm because our technology arm was a hybrid remote team and the law firm people were full-time at office. When the MCO happened, we told them, it's okay, you just need to work like us. It's okay, no problem. And the reality is it has actually happened. So we have a very trust-based system now. There is a form where people fill up when they will be in office, given that we are trying to stagger the amount of people in office. So there clearly has to be an underlying basis of trust, right? Where the leaders respect the team and the team also respect the trust that has been given to them. There is project management systems. There are cloud systems. Those have helped us to remain in contact, but these were systems where we had already invested in them over the years. In fact, as early as the early 2000s and 10s. So I think the familiarity with this technology really helped the process of change. I think what I would say though is, given that in Malaysia, maybe 80-90%, correct me if I'm wrong, in terms of the law firms, 80 to 90% are smaller or smallish law firms with under 10 lawyers. So they're not all like Shearn, where you have a big tech budget with IT support personnel to maintain the IT infrastructure. A lot of small to medium size legal firms, they may or may not have invested in cloud technologies. I'm not saying that all the big law firms have either, but just coming from that mindset, from if you have a small law firm, it will be easier for people to pivot just generally, because all you really have to do is sign up for these services, teach your people how to do it, and it's a small team. That would be a easier process. Whereas, for larger firms, you have really, a lot of stakeholders. You have the shareholders, you have the partners, you have the salaried partners, then you have the senior LAs, the LAs. There are a lot of people that, you basically have to manage. And that process, I think, really takes time. And this kind of things really can't be rushed. It requires both the time, the respect, and then the willingness to learn, to build that culture, and also the, if you may, the organizational structure that then empowers the people to be able to collaborate better using both the processes, a combination of both the processes and the tools that are available to them.
That's nice. And I think I will have to direct this question to Ms. Abhi. Like, how can law students like stand out and excel in like during this challenging time and everything?
So I think it's very important that a lot of students, when they're going into law firms, their mindset is very much like, oh, a law firm's only going to accept me if I have done mooting and debating and law-related work. And the reality is that's not really how law firms are hiring anymore, because everyone has that. I mean, that's not going to set you apart. If you have done stuff that's interesting, that's actually what law firms are looking for. And something, so law firms are now really in an age where they're trying to expand into new areas and they're trying to innovate. That much I must commend a lot of firms for. And especially in things like cyber-related law, cyber crime law, cyber fraud, and things like that. That's areas that firms are really pushing to expand now. And I think if you do have a background or at least some experience in that sort of tech area, that would definitely put you ahead, because they're actually looking for people, because the old lawyers may not necessarily be wanting to start up new practice areas, but they'll be willing to let younger lawyers, if they do have knowledge and they do have experience, to at least, spearhead some of these efforts. And I think if you are familiar with those kind of things, it does give you an advantage. So, if you talk about things like, for instance, like blockchain, I don't think the majority of senior lawyers would know what it is or how it operates. I mean, it's obviously people who are specifically in that area of financial services, maybe they would, but the majority wouldn't. But it's becoming more and more reality that these type of transactions are sort of appearing in every field of law, whether it's tax law. I mean, tax law, we're seeing huge amounts of technology being used, for instance, for tracing bank accounts and stuff like that. So knowledge of how that works is really important. Things like where you may be conducting a business remotely, but tax is based predominantly on the place of your business. So you may have your business being conducted remotely, but you may be delivering a product in a different location, determining where your place of business. All of these are questions that really go into real questions of how the technology is built around your businesses and things like that. Competition law is another huge area, because obviously now there's a lot more interconnectivity. People are reviewing, for instance, as mentioned, blockchain things, people are reviewing things in different locations at the same time. Does this pose a risk to competition law, because it creates more connectivity, whereas competition is really to prevent people from, competitors from collaborating with each other. So yeah, I think if people do have some basic financial and tech background in that respect, I think it's going to be a huge advantage compared to what previously was the traditional notion of what you need as on your CV to get in. I think all of that is now very much outdated, and you need to adapt. And I think that will give a lot of students an edge.
Thank you for sharing. I think like that's very true. And also now, like in light of the digitalization of the legal industry, how can we like help people who are actually living in rural areas, and especially like people who need legal aids and everything? How can like we make it available to them? Any speakers would like to answer that?
Wow, I think that's pretty much an access to justice kind of a matter. Under LawTech Malaysia, we have tried to address this issue by organizing hackathons. And when I was crafting the problem statements, access to justice has always been one of the key headers that a lot of our participants during the Legal Tech Hackathon had wanted to address. So in terms of rural area, I think the most important thing is to have the government support, especially or maybe private initiative support to give them the infrastructure as well as the awareness on how to use technology properly. But surprisingly, in terms of our Malaysian access to smartphones, our smartphone penetration rate is above 70%, which means that even in rural areas, there's a high likelihood that a person has a smartphone. It's just the usage of it is not the best. So they might use it to go on TikTok or Facebook, or maybe go on YouTube or Instagram, but not on things that may allow them to learn about their basic rights, legally speaking, or to learn about how they can learn more on or educate themselves about where they can find lawyers that can help them with their matter, or where they are able to matchmake certain communities to, you know, bring out an issue or communal or societal issue within their area. So I think it is collaborative. It is not a one firm or one organization kind of initiative to run. Yeah, that's pretty much what I think. We can come up with all the tech we want.
True. Like it all boils down to like the illiteracy rate and like the education system and everything, right? So to add on to that, how do you think like has the digitalization of the legal industry like affect the demand for legal services?
Okay, I'll take that one. Definitely, I think most firms have seen a dip in collections, in invoicing, in new cases. How that relates to your previous question perhaps would be, if you're currently a law student and you know that your target companies that you want to join in the future are having, you know, problems getting new clients or new files online, one of the things that you could do maybe is develop your creative skills, develop your customer service skills, whether it's, you know, displaying your technical expertise, getting to know how to do business development. All these are, you know, skills that are very, very relevant to lawyers now, as well as upcoming law students and would-be lawyers. So some of these skills you can train, but if you have them, it would be definitely a big plus. So you see like a lot of practicing lawyers who are very active in the social media circles or the content development space, like Li Shi or Feng Cheng Leong. These are definitely people to emulate. This would help your firm grow during this period, this long winter, as we would call it.
I'll add on to what May has said. So the question that was addressed to Abi earlier, the skill sets that law firms are looking at has changed tremendously over the years. And about a decade ago, when I started helping law firms to develop attachment programs, paralegaling programs and whatnot, we have always kept in mind to add on elements that are outside the law. So you can do creative writing. You can pick up skills in terms of data science. You can pick up skills in terms of graphic design. You can pick up skills in terms of negotiations. And that is pretty different from what advocacy is. And all these things come together to put a gloss on your resume. And these are essential skills that law schools don't really teach in classrooms. These are things that you need to take the initiative to learn by yourself. Go on crash course on YouTube, you know, learn something new. Read some books, you know, there are fantastic books out there. They may be repetitive sometimes, but there's still essence to be absorbed from books that are out there on professional development, self-development, business development, you know. So pick up skills along the way. That would definitely benefit future young lawyers.
Thank you so much for sharing. Does Mr. Abhi has anything to add to that?
I agree completely with what Adeline and May have said. I think a part of the problem is that historically, obviously in the past, now there are many. I don't quote me on this. I think it's something like 17,000 lawyers in Malaysia. Whereas I think a lot of firms in Malaysia are quite old, and they were built on a foundation where the competition wasn't as stiff as it is now. And I think the mindset a lot of the time prior to this was that, we don't really need to innovate much because we're just getting work that's pouring in day by day because people don't have that many options. Whereas now people have thousands of options. So the need to actually innovate, as Ellen rightly pointed out, is becoming extremely crucial, which is why if you compare LinkedIn, if you used to scroll about 5 months ago, you'd see 1-2 legal articles, or at least on mine, I would see 1-2 legal articles, being posted on a daily basis. And if I go on LinkedIn now, it's like on a daily basis, you'd see like 20, 30 people saying, oh, I did this write-up on this, I did this, because people are now realizing, and it took MCO for people to realize how ill-equipped, maybe not ill-equipped is the right idea, but at least that they didn't see the need for it prior. And now it's becoming a real issue because those who have done it are fine, and those who haven't adapted are now facing real problems because people don't know who they are. They've not adapted in that area. So now posting stuff online, doing write-ups are becoming increasingly important. And firms are really pushing their next generation of lawyers to develop that area. Previously, as Ellen also already pointed out, it was all about, oh, this is just advocacy. You need to focus on your advocacy. You need to just read the law. And it was all about just how much law you knew. It's now come to the point where it's really half of it. Obviously, the law is important, but it's now a whole different ball game. It's not just about the law. It's really about what you do to put your name out there. And it's not going to be the same situation where people can just go, oh yeah, the work is going to come in, because it really isn't, not with the amount of competition that there is now in the legal market.
Yeah, true. I think that's very true. And you guys mentioned before, like it will be hard for criminal proceedings to be conducted online because there's the need to cross-examine witnesses and everything. Like, how do you think the judiciary or the bar council can go around that to make it happen? Anyone would like to answer that question?
I think perhaps Abhi would be the best to take on the question because he's the practitioner here. I'm so sorry.
I don't know. I just very simply say that I think the first step is really, I think we shouldn't be jumping the gun and thinking of solving the problems all in a day, right? The witness things is probably like the steps that we'll take on later. It doesn't necessarily mean that all proceedings have to be done online, but the majority of them can be, at least applications. A lot of the stuff that is in court is actually just applications. A lot of it is just done by affidavit evidence. At least a lot of that can be imported into an online system, and you at least see half of the court being sort of released, because that is the majority. If you hear a normal case, the actual case is only one part, but the bulk of it is actually all these little other applications that are made in between. And I think that's the first problem that needs to be solved. I think when it comes to witnesses, yes, it is an issue. It's something that we'll have to think about for the future. I think there'll be a lot of resistance for that kind of thing, and we'll have to take it a step at a time. But I think we shouldn't jump the gun, and we should move at least the stuff that we know can easily be imported, applications and stuff like that. That's what the law really needs to address. And as we move along, we'll see how it goes though.
I'll add on. Oops, sorry, you first, May.
Good. So I was just gonna jump in and say quick wins. I think like Abhi says, quick wins. That's probably the best way to deal with this, given that we might be in this situation for a long while. We wouldn't also want our courts to spend a lot of capex on things that are not necessarily going to yield the results that we really want at this time.
If I may suggest, There are two things that I would, on a personal level, really like to see the judiciary and the Bar Council take on. The first thing would be regulations around legal tech. Don't regulate it because you don't need to. Innovation is an area where there's less regulation, the better, because then you don't put everybody in a box. But there's definitely a lot more support that can come from the Bar Council, I believe. It is something that we can probably learn from the Singaporean side. There are investments that are going on into legal tech. It's very encouraging, and you can literally see the legal tech scene boom. And there's a lot more solutions that are affordable for the legal practice that came out because of such initiative that was driven from top down rather than from grassroots up. For me, my companies have tried to make changes from the grassroots up. It is a really long and hard battle. And without collaboration with authorities, regulatory bodies, this dream will never happen. Innovation en masse will never really happen until and unless institutions, regulators are able to collaborate together and say, look, we're going to invest into innovation of our legal industry, innovation of legal technology, and that's going to make things happen. That's going to make the legal practice a much more blossoming area to practice in. That's number one. Number two is digital signature. We really need a change because even now, if you want to stamp a tenancy agreement, it cannot be digitally signed. It has to be physically signed and sent over for stamping, even if the stamping is digital by itself. So I think business would boom, not just making jobs for lawyers easier, but business industry itself would boom if the regulations around digital signature and the recognition for digital signature is better established. Because right now, I believe there are only a handful of solution providers whose digital signature solutions are recognized by the government or by local authorities. So if that one can be liberalized, I think that would be fantastic. But yeah, I may be living in the Garden of Eden, but those are the two little things that I would like to bring up.
Those are very interesting points. Thank you for sharing. I see we've reached the 1 hour mark, so we'll now be addressing the questions from the attendees. So the first one is directed to Ms. Adeline. Ms., you mentioned that lawyers at this time should experiment with various things. Is it really advisable to do so? Because most smaller firms are currently struggling to make the cut of actually staying in the market itself.
Who say experimenting requires money? There's lots of systems out there that are free for you to use. Experimenting means you open yourself up to trying different modes of doing things, to doing things differently, like what May says, to adapt to change, right? So there are many different things that you may want to rethink in terms of your processes. Let's say appointment with prospects. How have you been dealing with it? With a logbook? Can that be better? Can you check the logbook online? If you can't, what else can you do with it? Simple little things like that. Experiment, try different things. If your accounting system is not working for you, try something else. It may not be something that you're going to subscribe straight away. Many a times, things that are offered or systems that are offered online now comes with a trial period. Try it. If you don't like it, terminate it before they charge your card. So that's pretty much it, but experiment, because that is the only thing that's going to keep the law firm alive. Not sticking with whatever you already know, but learning something new. So if you don't experiment, sooner or later, you're going to be left out. And that is the key to survival, not the other way around.
Thank you for addressing the question. Moving on, what will it take for the profession to actually grow more receptive towards the shift to technology, even if MCO has not been enough of a catalyst to make them do that? Ms. Lum?
Okay. This is actually a very interesting question, because just before I jump onto this call, I was reading a link shared by my friend, the head of learning and development in PwC. And interestingly enough, there was a survey done in Malaysia with 800 odd participants, and only about 49% thought that learning or taking responsibility of their own learning was their responsibility. So that means 51% thought it's someone else's responsibility, right? This is not even including the percentage who actually went out and do something, right? So 49% believe that it is their responsibility to take responsibility for their own learning. Until that mindset is changed, we will see 51% not doing anything, and there's nothing you can do about it. So this is life, you know. But if you are one of that 49% per se, who thinks that you are in charge of your own growth, you've listened to, you know, a lot of wise things by Adeline, Abi here tonight, and you can maybe go home and critically assess yourself. Look, what else do you have to grow in? Then, like Adeline says, go on a YouTube learning spree and see where that takes you. And I think that whether or not you're a law student, you're a law firm, you're a law firm employee, that really will change the direction that you go towards to. And aside from just trying without, you know, without cost, I would say that if you're a law firm and you manage to say, improve your processes by 80% or 90%, you might actually end up saving costs.
That's true. So the next question is, do you guys think, like, with working digitally, will it be harder to maintain client relationship? Like, if not, how would you suggest to maintain a better client relationships, like online? Mr. Abi?
I think it's actually easier to maintain client relationships. It's so much easier now to arrange for calls with your clients and to discuss stuff. Previously, clients were always insisting that they wanted to see us in person. So that actually limits your time to talk to people and to actually discuss matters significantly, because a lot of the time that you spend is just traveling. Whereas now we can do multiple calls in a day. We can do multiple webinars in a day. So I think it's definitely easier to maintain a client relationship. And also, just aside from maintaining relationships, creating new relationships is definitely easier when you embrace technological advances, because we find that a lot of clients now are not identifying us necessarily just through word of mouth, but through the stuff that people have posted online, based on write-ups that have been done by other independent providers or things like that, and stuff that's been put online. So I think it's actually a much better way moving forward. Of course, some clients insist on face-to-face and things like that, but otherwise the majority of them, at least companies, I think it's better this way.
True, thank you so much. And the next question is, we have seen the dangers of deregulation from banking to blockchain. How do we balance the integrity of the profession and ensure compliance with the many rules with the deregulated legal tech market? Would Ms. Adeline like to address that question?
This is a very interesting question. So in, say, fintech, with the deregulation itself, there comes a lot of worries that some technologies can go rogue, such as there may be hacked. Even blockchain can be hacked, but it may be somewhere in the future, maybe not now yet, right here. It's the concept of knowing that nothing is fully foolproof. So if you put an aeroplane up in the sky, there will be a risk for it crashing. Nobody is going to give you 100% guarantee that nothing is going to crash. But the thing is, hey, you got a new mode of transport that's able to expedite your journey by 100 times. For instance, rather than you walking from here to Germany, you can fly now, right? So I think that it's a philosophical question, I think. whether or not to deregulize, whether or not when you deregulize things will go rogue, are philosophical questions. So it is pertinent for authorities to put in some form of regulation, but the regulation should not be stifling. You can do all the background checks that you need. You can require companies who wants to embark or get investments to start their legal tech journey, for instance, in order to have them be accountable to whatever they've built and to be accountable to future clients that they will be serving. But apart from that, there is really no guarantee that technology is able to serve you without error, that technologies cannot be hacked and cannot be abused. There's no such thing. If our global judiciary system cannot guarantee you justice in every single way, I don't think technology can give you the same kind of promise. Even if you regulate it very, very tightly, I don't think it will happen.
I think this question is really on a lot of students' mind in the UK, given the recent tech justice issue. And in Malaysia, I think just to add on what Adeline said earlier, the Securities Commission generally does, or BNM does ask for feedback whenever they are issuing guidance on some things. And one of the things that stood out to me, which they did take into consideration, was in one forum, there were questions like, how do we know whether these companies or startups raising like enormous amounts of money through ICOs or IEOs or whatever are legit? And based on our contacts, which would range from both companies who are seeking funding as well as investors, people generally do want to know when frauds have been identified. And if you go and look at the Securities Commission website now, you actually see a whole list of approved and not approved people. And although, I thought that was quite a good stand, to actually put it up. So you can really check, look, is this company legit or not? And even on ICO or IEO's website, you can see there are citizen journalists or citizen researchers who go and read the white paper, yellow paper of all these projects and put their comments there. So it seems that we are in an information age where the access to data is pretty much second to none. The only question really is, do you have enough time to process it? And yeah, Adeline, would you like to add on?
I would just say, if the legal tech scene were to be regulated, then have that regulation transparent. I think that would be the most important. Have it transparent. If the company is rejected or if the startup is rejected for whatever reason, it has to be made transparent. So I think that would be the best already. So you can do background check. You can ask for the objectives of them or the intentions of them wanting to have this innovative product out in the market or wanting to develop such a product. And then have it open to public to see. And as what May has mentioned, then people can comment on it. Then you can hear sentiments on the ground on what is actually required in the public sphere. It's not that difficult from there.
Thank you so much for addressing the question. This question will be directed to Ms. Abi. Do you think virtual internship by Inside Sherpa or vacation scheme in the UK is like, I'm not sure which firm is that, like in the UK is relevant in terms of like applying legal jobs in Malaysia?
As I've said before, I think obviously internships are great and virtual internships are great. I think anything that it's in your CV that sets you apart from others would be beneficial. How the types of firms that would appreciate that obviously would differ across the board. But I would definitely think stuff like that would be beneficial. And if it's something that is unique in your experience compared to others, that would definitely set you apart.
That's nice. Like, what about like recently, the accounting Big Four has been like offering alternative legal services. Like, how do you think this would impact the existing like legal services?
Okay.
So actually, oh, sorry, please.
Abhi, go ahead first.
Oh,
I just
okay.
thought, like by default, I have to address this later because I'm ex Big Four.
All right. Okay. I'm not sure if you concur with my views. I have a lot of views on this matter because it is an issue, and I think it worries a lot. It is an issue on both sides because I think certain law firms are also undertaking or have taken up work that, for instance, accounting firms may think is within their sphere of competence. And similarly, accounting firms are taking up stuff which is within the sphere of competence of law firms. I think as far as companies go, law firms should do legal work and accounting firms should do accounting work. And the main reason for that, well, there are two major reasons. The biggest reason for that, and we've actually seen this, there's some case law in Malaysia where this is panned out. If you are not actually, you may be giving legal rated services. The one major issue is that if you're not actually a lawyer, a lot of the information that passes between you and your client may not be protected by privilege. And privilege is a major issue, right? Because if you're a lawyer, that means that any communications with your client are protected. They can't be adduced in court. Whereas if you're not a lawyer and there is a passing of legal information, that can be adduced in court, and that's not protected. And there's actually a famous case in Malaysia where such a thing happened, where there was legal advice that was given by an accounting firm. It was Arthur Anderson at the time, if I'm not mistaken. And that opinion was adduced in court, which would never have happened if a lawyer had given the opinion. And the entirety of that opinion was what caused the taxpayer in that matter to lose the case, because it set out everything and all of it was adduced in court. And that's one major risk. But the bigger risk, and this is really also a reason why law firms should not be undertaking work that's within the scope of accounting firms and vice versa, is that your insurance will not cover you. Right? If you are a law firm giving accounting, if you're doing computations and things like that, is your insurance really going to cover you? In the same way, if an accounting firm is giving legal advice, we don't know if the insurance will cover you, and you'll only really find out when it's too late. Of course, there are firms, even accounting for Big Four, which actually hire legal services, like people in the legal services. Now, that is obviously a slightly different type of scenario. But I don't think lawyers should be worried, provided that that divide is made clear. You work within your field of competence because A, that's what your insurance covers you for, and B, because you don't want to be giving wrongful advice, which you're not equipped to give. And of course, the other thing is obviously the matter of what is documents that a particular individual may be comfortable with being out in the open if it's not protected by privilege. So I think those are the main considerations. Just don't do work that you're not supposed to be doing. I think that's the sort of easy answer to it.
Thank you for sharing. What about Ms. Lum?
Okay, so I think that the core focus area of a lot of our selling point, I would say, of a lot of the Big Four going into or venturing into alternate legal services would be the fact that they already do a lot of work for that company. And they are very familiar with the processes and procedures now. In a time where pretty much every company is facing a lot of pressure to perform. So CLOs are trying to become a business partner of the business if they are already not already one of the key business partners. HR is now striving to become a key business partner of the business. These are areas where if they do have that knowledge of how the other processes work, they would have that advantage in the integration of the business process, and that would be where they would be better positioned to actually help to streamline the processes sometimes. So whether or not they do legal work in the end, I think in Malaysia it's quite clear. The law firms are set up in a partnership format, it has to be a partnership. And in audit firms are also partnerships, but advisory and consulting, that's going to be a tricky area where things are going to get more competitive. And like it or not, this is the market environment that you all are graduating out to. So go.
What about Ms. Adeline? What are your views on this?
I think Abhi and May has covered it quite extensively, so I have nothing else to add.
Okay, I think that's about it. Thank you so much for being here with us today on a Saturday night. It's been a great pleasure speaking to all of you, and thank you for all the attendees for joining us. I apologize for going well over the 1 hour mark. So thank you so much for being here with us today. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.